Michael Clark had grown up in the quiet English countryside, where the fields stretched as far as the eye could see, and life moved at a gentle pace. The Clark family, though not wealthy, lived comfortably, with Michael being their pride and joy. When he secured a well-paying job in London, the family was over the moon. It was his big break, and they knew it. The night before his departure, the family gathered around him, wishing him luck and praying for his safety. Dressed in his finest suit, Michael set off at dawn, catching the early train to the city. His family waved him off with smiles and teary eyes, unaware that this was the last time they would ever see him. Daniel's life had never been easy. He had grown up in a working-class neighborhood in Manchester, the eldest of 5 children. His father, a factory worker, died when Daniel was just 12, leaving his mother to raise the children on her own. Times were tough and money was always tight. Daniel dropped out of school at 16 to work odd jobs, but they never seemed to last. He had always dreamed of something more: escape from the grinding poverty that had defined his life. But without an education or connections, those dreams seemed hopelessly out of reach. By the time he turned 21, he found himself mixing with a rough crowd. Petty crime, shoplifting, selling stolen goods became a way of life. It wasn't long before he found himself involved with local gangs, running small jobs for quick cash. But after narrowly avoiding prison time following a botched robbery, Daniel decided to turn his life around. He needed a fresh start, far away from the trouble in Manchester. That's when he moved to the countryside, taking a job as a laborer on a farm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest work, and for the first time in his life, Daniel felt like he was building something good. One day, through a friend of the farmer, he heard about the Clark family looking for help after Mr. Clark's heart attack. "They're good people," his friend had said. "If you work hard, they'll treat you well." Desperate for stability and a chance to leave his criminal past behind, Daniel jumped at the opportunity. When Daniel arrived at the Clark family home, he was met with warmth and kindness. Mr. Clark, still recovering from his heart attack, welcomed him with open arms. "Thank you for coming, Daniel," Mr. Clark had said, his voice weak but filled with gratitude. "We could really use the help." Daniel was struck by how different the Clarks were from the people he had grown up around. They weren't rich, but they were kind and decent. He was given a small room in the house and quickly got to work maintaining the garden, cleaning the house, and running errands. Margaret Clark, Michael's mother, was particularly kind, often leaving him home-cooked meals and asking about his well-being. Over time, Daniel found himself becoming a part of the family. He was trusted to handle household finances, take care of the family's property, and even assist with personal tasks. The Clarks treated him with respect, something he had rarely experienced before. Michael, who was studying at university during Daniel's early years with the family, would come home during the holidays. He and Daniel, close in age, often chatted about their lives and ambitions. Michael was always so optimistic about his future, full of plans to make a mark in the world. Daniel listened, but there was always a gnawing sense of envy in the pit of his stomach. Michael had everything: supportive parents, a promising career, and a bright future. Daniel's own life felt like a series of missed opportunities and dead ends. As the years passed, the envy grew. Daniel watched from the shadows as Michael's life blossomed, while his own remained stagnant. The kindness of the Clarks, which had once made Daniel feel grateful, now made him feel trapped. He resented the fact that no matter how hard he worked, he would always be the helpless servant, bound by the limits of his past. It wasn't long before old habits began to resurface. Daniel started reconnecting with his criminal contacts, mostly out of frustration and the desire for quick money. In secret, he began selling small valuables from the Clarks' home, thinking they'd never notice. He pocketed cash meant for household expenses and gambled it away in the neighboring town. But it still wasn't enough. The life he wanted, the wealth, the respect, remained out of reach. When Michael got the job in London and announced he'd be leaving for good, something snapped in Daniel. It was the perfect opportunity, the final piece of the puzzle. He knew how much the Clarks loved their son, how they'd do anything to get him back if something happened to him. The temptation to betray them, to orchestrate a kidnapping and walk away with a fortune, became too strong to resist. Daniel contacted a gang head done business with in the past. They were ruthless men, but efficient, and they had experience in kidnapping for ransom. Daniel provided them with all the information they needed: Michael's schedule, his route to London, and his family's finances. The plan was simple: abduct Michael, demand a ransom, and once the money was paid, release him. "I'll be out of here after this," Daniel had thought to himself. "They'll never see me again." The plan went into action the day Michael left for London. As Michael's train passed through a remote area, it was stopped abruptly by armed men. Chaos ensued as passengers were forced off the train, and Michael was dragged into a waiting van. His cries for help went unanswered as he was driven deep into the countryside, far from any hope of rescue. For days, Michael was held captive in a decrepit farmhouse. His captors were ruthless, torturing him to make sure he sounded desperate in the ransom videos they sent to his family. "Please, Mom, Dad." Michael's voice was strained and filled with fear in the video. "They want £2 million. Please, just pay them. I want to come home." The Clark family was devastated when they received the video. Margaret collapsed, sobbing uncontrollably, while Mr. Clark frantically began to gather the ransom. He sold everything he could: his car, the family home, calling in every favor he was owed. Friends and relatives contributed what they could, and after several agonizing days, the £2 million was ready. The ransom was paid, but Michael never came home. Days turned into weeks with no word from the kidnappers. The police were working around the clock, but leads were scarce. Ada, Michael's younger sister, couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, not just with the kidnapping, but with Daniel. He had been acting strangely ever since Michael's disappearance, avoiding eye contact and sneaking out late at night. One evening, Ada overheard him on the phone. "You could have asked for more," Daniel whispered. "2 million wasn't enough." Ada's heart raced. She quickly informed her father, and the police were called. Daniel was arrested the next day, though he initially denied any involvement. But under pressure, he cracked, confessing to his role in the kidnapping. "I didn't think they'd kill him," Daniel muttered during his interrogation. "I just wanted the money." The gang had gone rogue. Once the ransom was paid, they saw no reason to release Michael. He had become a liability, so they executed him and buried his body in a shallow grave in the woods. When Mr. Clark confronted Daniel at the police station, his voice was filled with rage and disbelief. "We trusted you. We welcomed you into our home. How could you do this?" Daniel couldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry," he muttered, but the words were empty. Thanks to Daniel's confession, the police were able to locate the gang. In a swift raid, they were arrested, and Michael's body was recovered. The Clark family was shattered, their son taken from them by someone they had trusted for years. Daniel was brought to trial, along with the members of the gang. The courtroom was filled with people who had followed the case closely, hoping for justice for Michael. The once confident Daniel now stood pale and gaunt, his past sins laid bare for all to see. His betrayal had not only cost Michael his life, but had also destroyed the trust of a family who had given him everything. After weeks of testimony, the judge delivered the verdict. "Daniel Jones, for your role in the kidnapping and murder of Michael Clark, you are sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole." The sentence did little to ease the Clark family's grief. Their son was gone, and nothing could bring him back. But they took solace in knowing that justice had been served. In the months following the trial, Ada suggested they turn their grief into something positive. "We can start a foundation in Michael's name," she told her father one evening. "We can help other families going through the same nightmare. We can make sure his death wasn't for nothing." Mr. Clark hesitated at first, but the idea grew on him. They established the Michael Clark Foundation, a charity that provided support for families affected by kidnapping and violent crimes. It started small but quickly grew, offering legal assistance, counseling, and financial support to those in need. The foundation became a beacon of hope for many, and through it, the Clark family found a new purpose. Though the pain of losing Michael never fully faded, The work of the Michael Clark Foundation gave them something to hold on to, something that kept Michael's memory alive in a meaningful way. A year had passed since the trial, and life in the Clark household had changed dramatically. The once lively home was now quieter, filled with a somber yet resilient spirit. Mr. Clark, who had once been consumed with guilt over Daniel's betrayal, had thrown himself into the work of the foundation, finding solace in helping others who had suffered similar fates. Ada, who spearheaded the foundation's operations, found strength in her brother's legacy. She often visited families in need, offering them not only financial aid, but the kind of emotional support she wished someone had offered them during Michael's disappearance. The Clarks knew they would never fully recover from the loss of their son, but through the foundation, they found a way to honor him. Michael's memory was no longer just a reminder of a tragic end, but a legacy of hope that would help countless others in the years to come. And as the years passed, the Clark family, though forever marked by the betrayal that had shattered their lives, stood as a testament to the strength of the human spirit. They had taken a tragedy and turned it into a force for good, ensuring that even in the face of unimaginable pain, they would never be defined by their loss, but by the love they had for Michael and the lives they saved in his name.